Pope Francis this weekend will canonize the two youngest witnesses, Jacinta and Francisco, who died in childhood. A very unusual move to confer sainthood on children.
What if secrets revealed over a century ago could still shape the world we live in today? What if ancient visions warned not just of past wars, but of challenges we're only starting to face right now? From a small Portuguese village in 1917 to the heart of the Vatican in 2025, the messages of Fatima have echoed louder than ever.
10-year-old Lucia and her younger cousins Jacinta and Francisco first saw the visions on May 13, 1917, telling them to pray for our broken world, then in the midst of World War I.
And now, with the recent passing of Pope Francis, their meaning feels even more urgent. In this video, we're diving deep into the mysteries of Fatima, uncovering the astonishing events witnessed by thousands, the hidden messages delivered to three humble children, and the truth about the third secret that the world has been waiting to fully understand.
Here's the Holy Father presenting a golden rose to a statue of Mary at the shrine. Francis, the fourth pope to visit the once small village where three children witnessed what they believed to be the Virgin Mary, the mother of Jesus.
Let's explore the miracles, the warnings, and the hope that continue to inspire millions today. Even with all his health problems, Pope Francis kept doing his job right up until the end. He even went to the Easter Sunday Mass in St. Peter's Square and gave a moving blessing to the tens of thousands of faithful people who were there.
Everybody was saying that if the miracle did not happen, the whole family would die. And so he stayed home. He was afraid. And because he was afraid to die, he wasn't there when the miracle of the sun occurred.
When Pope Francis died, a time in the history of the Catholic Church came to an end. He brought a new style to the papacy as the first pope from the Americas. He put a lot of emphasis on things like mercy, charity, poverty, and protecting the environment. He left a big legacy by putting a lot of stress on dialogue and working to change some parts of how the church is run. As pope, he also showed a strong commitment to Marian spirituality. It was no surprise that one of his last big acts as pope was a trip to the shrine of Our Lady of Fatima in Portugal, which is one of the most important Marian shrines in the world. This was confirmed by Pope Francis in March 2025, just a few weeks before he died. The original figure of Our Lady of Fatima would be brought to Rome for a Jubilee of Marian Spirituality in October of that year. The goal of this event was to show how important the lessons from Fatima are still today, and to bring Catholics from all over the world together to pray and think. Making the trip with the statue to Rome would be a respect to the Virgin Mary and a sign of hope and unity at a time when the world is still dealing with political and social unrest. For more than 100 years, Christians have been spellbound by the story of Fatima. On May 13, 1917, Lucia dos Santos, her cousins Francisco and Jacinta Marto, and another child, a shepherd, saw a lady more brilliant than the sun in a field near Fatima, Portugal. This was the start of the story. They said that the lady told them she was from heaven and asked them to come back to the same spot every month on the 13th for 6 months. The children kept having visions for several more months. During these visions, they said the lady gave them 3 important messages, which became known as the Three Secrets of Fatima. The Catholic Church has known for a long time that the apparitions at Fatima were important. After a thorough study, the Church said in 1930 that the apparitions were worthy of belief. Since then, millions of people have gone to Fatima to pray, get healed, and think about the messages of repentance, prayer, and peace that the Virgin Mary sent. Sister Lucia told of the 3 secrets, and the Vatican later confirmed them. They include strong and sometimes scary visions. For the first secret, he had a terrifying picture of hell. The second one was about the start of World War II and how the world needed to dedicate itself to Mary's Immaculate Heart to stop even worse disasters. The third secret was kept secret for decades and wasn't made public until 2000. It showed a symbolic picture of Christians being persecuted and the church suffering. Pope Francis was very aware that these lessons were still important, especially given the problems facing the world at the time. As an example of what he called a piecemeal world war, he often used the wars in Ukraine, Syria, and different parts of Africa. This was similar to what the Fatima prophecies said would happen. In the last few months of his life, he went to Fatima, which strengthened his view that people need to return to prayer, repentance, and unity to stop falling further into violence and chaos. In the case of Fatima, Pope Francis thought that the Pope should not just watch prophecies happen, but also take part in making them happen. Francis stressed that the vision in the third secret was not a set prediction of doom that could not be avoided. He did this by drawing on the interpretations of previous popes and theologians, such as Pope Benedict XV. Instead, it was a wake-up call, a warning that the future is not set in stone and that people have the power to choose between disaster and redemption. When Pope Francis dedicated the world, and then Russia and Ukraine in particular, to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, it became even more clear how important the Fatima message was. People saw this act, which happened in 2022 during a time of heavy fighting in Eastern Europe, as a continuation of the request the Virgin Mary made to the children of Fatima more than 100 years before. It was a strong action that showed how strongly the Pope believes that spiritual rebirth and working together around the world can bring about peace. Pope Francis had a real bond with Our Lady of Fatima. It showed a real and deep loyalty to Mary, which shaped many parts of his leadership. He talked a lot about Mary's role as a mother who guides and shields, especially when things are going badly. In a world that was becoming more divided, unsure, and at war, Francis's focus on Mary's messages from Fatima showed the way to peace and hope. Many Catholics thought that his last trip to Fatima and the plans for the Jubilee of Marian Spirituality were a proper way for him to end his job as Pope. Pope Francis kept working to get people to pray to Mary for help, just like the children of Fatima did in 1917, even though his health was getting worse. People all over the world, including Catholics, are sad about his death, but they are also very thankful for his life and guidance. In his last few months, he did many kind, faith-filled, and humble things that were in line with the spirit of Fatima that he worked so hard to spread. There was more to Fatima's story than just the first sighting. In fact, what happened at the Cova da Iria in Portugal from May to October 1917 set the stage for one of the most important and long-lasting spiritual events in modern Catholic history. Every 13th day of the month, Lucia dos Santos, her uncles Francisco and Jacinta Marto, and the three children went back to the place where they said they met the Lady from Heaven. At the time of the events at Fatima, Europe was in the middle of the terrible First World War. There was governmental instability, anti-religious feeling, and social unrest in Portugal itself. At first, people were both interested and skeptical about the ghosts. Many people in the area believed the kids, but others, including the city's leaders, thought they were making things up or even lying. The kids were under a lot of pressure from both outsiders and some people in their own groups. Officials tried to get them to change their stories by questioning them and even detaining them more than once. Even though these things happened, the kids stuck to their stories. According to what they said, each apparition brought a word from the Lady telling people to return to God through prayer, especially praying the rosary, doing penance, and loving her Immaculate Heart. She said bad things would happen to the world if people didn't change. The promise of a miracle on October 13, 1917, was one of the most interesting things about the visions. The Lady is said to have told the kids that she would do a sign so that everyone would believe. Quickly, word of this forecast spread, and by the set date, tens of thousands of people from all walks of life had gathered at the Cova da Iria. Some people came because they believed, others because they were interested, and still others because they were skeptical and wanted to show that the kids' claims were false. That morning, the weather was awful. It rained hard, so the fields and the people were soaked. The ground was caked with mud, and many people were standing in puddles with their shoes and clothes completely wet. Even though things were bad, they waited with a mix of hope and fear. Several independent stories, including ones from secular newspapers at the time, say that something very strange happened. Witnesses said it stopped raining all of a sudden, and the clouds broke apart. The sky cleared up and the sun came out, but it didn't look like it usually does. It changed shape and looked like a spinning disc. It shone brightly, but not too brightly, and it gave off a rainbow of bright colors. In ways that couldn't be explained by physics, people saw the sun dance, spin, and zigzag across the sky. Some reports said it looked like the sun fell toward the earth, scaring people, and then it went back to its normal position in the sky. The event, which became known as the Miracle of the Sun, happened for about 10 minutes and was seen by about 70,000 people, including scientists, media, believers, and skeptics. Several newspapers wrote about the miracle, and while some tried to come up with naturalistic answers, no scientists have ever been able to agree on a good one. Many people thought that the miracle of the sun was the clearest proof that the ghosts were real. It turned Fatima from a local curiosity into a sacred event that people all over the world knew about. Around the same time, people started going on pilgrimages to the spot, and within a few years, the Catholic Church started an official investigation into what happened. The Church officially recognized the apparitions as real in 1930, but it has always said that believing in the apparitions of Mary is not a requirement for faith. Both the apparitions and the miracle were very important, not just because they were exciting, but also because of what they meant. People saw the lady's repeated pleas for prayer, penance, and devotion to her Immaculate Heart as urgent calls for spiritual rebirth in a world that seemed to be getting more and more violent and secular. The kids talked about what they had seen and heard in more depth over time. The lady had told people that a second, even worse war would happen if they didn't change their ways. She also said that Russia needed to be dedicated to her Immaculate Heart so that its mistakes wouldn't spread. Many people think that this was a reference to the rise of atheistic communism. The miracle and the kids' stories were more convincing because of their real-life experiences. Both Francisco and Jacinta were greatly affected by what happened, and they became famous for how religious they were and how much they gave up for others. Both children died young during the flu pandemic that followed World War I. Their deaths were marked by great faith and acceptance, which is why Pope John Paul II beatified them in 2000. They were canonized in 2017 during the centenary celebrations of the apparitions at Fatima. The only seer who lived, Lucia, became a Carmelite nun. Throughout her life, she kept talking about what she knew about the visions and the lessons the Virgin Mary gave her. Her works, especially her memoirs, have given the Church and the faithful a full picture of what happened in 1917 and how it all affected her spiritually. The story of Fatima is more than just a string of miracles. It's also a call to spiritual awareness and change. Even though the miracle of the sun is a dramatic story, it serves to emphasize the greater message, that people need to turn away from sin and try to make peace with God. Like the popes before him, Pope Francis took this lesson very seriously while he was in office. His many references to global wars as examples of a piecemeal world war showed that he thought Fatima's messages were not old-fashioned reminders of the past, but important calls for the present. Near where the apparitions happened, the shrine of Our Lady of Fatima was built. It has since become one of the most important places for Catholics to go on a journey. Millions of people go to Fatima every year to pray, get better, and refresh their faith. The site has the Chapel of the Apparitions and the Basilica of Our Lady of the Rosary. The Chapel of the Apparitions was built on the spot where the Lady appeared. Many people today still pray to Fatima and think about her. The messages that were given there are still relevant today. They tell Christians that prayer, repentance, and devotion to Mary are the best ways to find peace. The miracle of the sun is still a strong reminder of God's help and that amazing things can happen to show how important faith and commitment are. It looked like hell in the first secret. Later, Lucia talked about how the lady showed them what looked like a sea of fire below the ground. The kids saw the souls of the damned inside it. These souls were shown as clear, glowing embers that were tossed around in the flames with scary-looking figures that looked like devils. The kids automatically screamed because the picture was so scary. They were calmed down by the lady, who told them that many lives could be saved if people turned back to God and prayed, especially the Rosary. The children were deeply affected by this vision, especially young Jacinta. She felt even more sorrow for sinners and felt the need to pray for them right away after the experience. The second secret built on the first and talked about more than just being saved. It also talked about what was happening in the world. The lady said that the Great War, which was still going on at the time, would soon be over. On the other hand, she said that if people didn't stop offending God, a bigger and worse war would start during the rule of the next pope. She talked about a sign that this new war would happen, an unknown light in the sky at night. A lot of people think that this sign was the strange aurora borealis that people saw in parts of North America and Europe on the night of January 25th and 26th, 1938, just a few months before World War II began. The fate of Russia was another important part of the second secret. The lady said that Russia would spread her errors throughout the world, which would cause many countries to suffer, go to war, and persecute the Church. In order to stop this, she asked that Russia be dedicated to her Immaculate Heart and that the faithful follow a ritual called the 5 First Saturdays. This included confessing sins, getting communion, saying 5 decades of the Rosary, and thinking about the mysteries of the Rosary for 15 minutes. All of these things were done to make Mary's Immaculate Heart whole again. She said that Russia would change its mind and there would be peace if these requests were taken seriously. There would be wars and the rise of communism and atheism if they didn't. The request to dedicate Russia became a major event in the history of the Church. Several popes, including Pius XII, John Paul II, and Francis, have done acts of consecration. However, some Catholics are still arguing about whether the specific request made at Fatima has been fully met. The third secret was still the most mysterious and contentious. It wasn't exposed right away like the first 2 secrets. In 1944, Sister Lucia wrote it down because her bishop told her to. She put it in an envelope and put a note inside telling people not to open it until 1960 or until the Church said it was okay. Since the secret wasn't revealed by 1960, there was a lot of wild speculation. Many people thought that the third secret had ominous warnings about the end of the world, a worldwide disaster, or a major problem in the Church. The Vatican didn't finally tell the world what was in the third secret until the year 2000, when Pope John Paul II and Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, later Pope Benedict XVI, were in charge. The published text says that the vision was of a bishop dressed in white, who is killed by soldiers shooting bullets and arrows as he walks through a destroyed city full of dead bodies. He was followed by other bishops, priests, holy men and women, and regular people who were also killed. 2 angels took the blood of the victims and sprinkled it on the souls that were on their way to God. The Vatican saw this vision as a metaphor for the pain Christians went through in the 20th century, including the attempt on the life of Pope John Paul II on May 13, 1981, which was exactly 64 years after the first apparition at Fatima. It was the Pope himself who said that the Virgin Mary saved his life. The next year, he paid his thanks by putting one of the bullets that had been taken out of him into the crown of the figure of Our Lady of Fatima. But even after the third secret came out, some critics and conspiracy theorists kept saying that the Vatican had kept some of the message from the public. They said there were more signs about falling away from the Church or terrible things happening that were too sensitive to share with the public. But Cardinal Ratzinger made it clear that there was nothing shocking hidden and that the vision's real purpose was to call people to conversion and repentance, not to predict specific disasters that could not be avoided. In how he understood the lesson of Fatima, Pope Francis agreed with this point of view. He said a lot of times that the point of prophetic dreams wasn't to scare people, but to get them to do good things. The image of the bishop in white, according to Francis, is not just connected to one pope or event. It stands for the Church's ongoing fight against evil in the world. His words told the faithful that history can be changed through prayer, sacrifice, and a strong desire for justice. In his later years, Pope Francis said that the ongoing wars in Syria, Ukraine, and other places showed that the world was still in great danger. He warned of a piecemeal Third World War, which was similar to how the vision of Fatima showed a lot of pain. He insisted, though, that these battles should not be seen as things that had to happen. Instead, he said, they should be seen as urgent calls to work for peace, reconciliation, and the safety of the weak. During his time as Pope, Francis emphasized the main ideas of the Fatima message: the need to pray, especially the Rosary, do repentance, and love Mary's Immaculate Heart. Many of the things he did, like going to Marian sites and praying for peace in public while Mary watched over him, showed how much he loved her. Claims that Mary has appeared to people are carefully looked over by the Church. No vision is taken lightly. Every case is looked into in great depth and according to a set plan to make sure it is real. Most of the time, the first test is done by the bishop of the diocese where the apparition is said to have happened. Some of the things that are looked at are how trustworthy the prophet is, how well the message fits with Catholic teaching, whether there were any miracles or healings, and what spiritual benefits the event had overall. If the bishop believes the vision, it might be accepted in the area. In some cases, especially important ones, The Vatican may also step in to help with the investigation. It's important to remember that Catholics don't have to believe in any secrets, even ones that are accepted by the Church. Accepting Marian apparitions is still a matter of personal faith, not blind faith. Even so, many of the recognized apparitions have had a huge impact on Catholic society and spirituality. In 1531, Our Lady of Guadalupe showed up as one of the first and most important Marian apparitions. Tradition says that on the hill of Tepeyac, the Virgin Mary appeared to a native Mexican farmer called Juan Diego. He spoke Nahuatl as his first language, and she asked that a church be built there. When Juan Diego told the local bishop about her wish, he was at first fired. Mary told Juan Diego to get roses that were magically blooming even though it wasn't the right time of year and give them to the bishop as proof. When he opened his robe to show the roses, there was a picture of the Virgin Mary on the fabric. This picture, which has been kept safe, is still one of the most well-known images of the Catholic faith in the Americas. Now, more people visit the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico City than any other Marian place in the world. In 1858, another important figure showed up in Lourdes, France. A young country girl named Bernadette Soubirous said she saw 18 ghostly figures of a woman who said her name was the Immaculate Conception. During these meetings, Mary asked Bernadette to pray and do penance and led her to a spring of water that has since been linked to many miracle healings. Millions of people come to the sanctuary of Our Lady of Lourdes every year to find spiritual and physical healing. It has become one of the most important pilgrimage places in the world. In 1879, 15 people in the small Irish town of Knock saw a ghostly figure on the gable wall of the parish church. The Virgin Mary, Saint Joseph, and Saint John the Evangelist were all in the vision. In contrast to the visions at Fatima and Lourdes, there was no spoken word. People have thought that the Knock apparition's silence was a deep sign of hope, comfort, and the quiet power of faith in hard times. Knock is now a major spiritual site for Catholics in Ireland and people from all over the world. There was a different, less well-known but still important group of apparitions in Rwanda from 1981 to 1989. They were called the Apparitions at Kibeho. A group of school children saw the Virgin Mary and was told to pray the Rosary, turn away from their sins, and get ready for a time of great pain. Sadly, many people see these visions as signs of things to come because in 1994, hundreds of thousands of people died in Rwanda during a terrible genocide. The Church has confirmed that the apparitions in Kibeho were real, and the lesson they brought is thought to be important for everyone, not just Rwanda. In the United States, Adele Bryce saw a very important image of Mary in Champion, Wisconsin, in 1859. Mary showed up to Adele and told her to teach kids in the area about the Catholic faith. As of 2010, the Church officially recognized this apparition as a Marian one. It was the first such event in the United States. People still come to the spot to pray at the shrine of Our Lady of Good Help. In 1973, a strange set of events happened in Akita, Japan. Sister Agnes Sasagawa reported seeing and hearing messages from the Virgin Mary, as well as a wooden statue of Mary crying more than once. The messages had similar themes to those at Fatima. They asked people to pray and turn back to God, and they warned of terrible things that would happen if people didn't do that. The local bishop believed the Akita apparitions were real, and they have gotten a lot of attention around the world because they look a lot like the earlier Fatima messages. There are some things that all of these ghosts have in common. The call to prayer, especially the Rosary, comes first. Mary almost always tells her followers to pray every day and offers the Rosary as a strong spiritual weapon against evil. Second, there is a lot of focus on turning away from sin and becoming a Christian. Mary always tells people that their mistakes cause them to suffer, but she also gives them hope that bad things can be avoided by praying and making changes. Third, many apparitions include a motherly call for peace and kindness, which emphasizes Mary's role as a mother not only to Jesus but to everyone. The Church's careful handling of Marian apparitions shows that it knows they could have an effect. Real apparitions can give people a deep new faith, bring about social change, and convert a huge number of people. But the Church is still careful, making sure that loyalty to Marian apparitions doesn't take the place of faith in Jesus Christ, which is the most important thing in Christian life. The lessons that Our Lady of Fatima gave to Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta were in line with Catholic teaching and had great spiritual benefits. For more than 100 years, Catholic faith has been shaped by the importance of prayer, penance, and devotion to Mary's Immaculate Heart. The miracle of the Sun and the revelation of Fatima's secrets made the call even more important by showing both a spiritual sign and a warning from the prophets. This careful balance was shown by Pope Francis. During his time as Pope, he recognized the value of devotion to the Virgin Mary and warned against sensationalism and putting too much emphasis on end-of-the-world fears. He told the faithful that the real point of Marian messages is to bring people closer to Christ, help them turn away from their sins, and inspire them to do acts of love and mercy. There is still a lot of mystery and debate about the third secret of Fatima, but it is still very important to Catholics. The Vatican publicly revealed what was in the third secret in 2000, but people have continued to think about and interpret what it means, especially since Pope Francis took office. His thoughts and the events that have happened around the world in recent years have made the lessons that were given at Fatima more important than ever. If you listen to what Pope Francis says about the world, you will hear a lot of warnings from Fatima. He warned that the world was going through a piecemeal Third World War by mentioning the many conflicts in different parts of the world that have caused a lot of pain. Many communities have been torn apart by war, poverty, and having to move, from Syria to Ukraine and from Africa to Latin America. Francis saw these events not as isolated incidents, but as signs of a greater spiritual crisis that was similar to the threats that were mentioned in the Fatima messages. In public speeches and writings, Pope Francis made it clear that the visions at Fatima should not be taken as sure signs of bad things to come. He told the faithful to see them as a call to action instead. He thinks that the third secret, which talks about pain and martyrdom, is not a scary prophecy, but a sharp reminder of the choices people have to make every day. People can change the course of events by praying, saying sorry, and doing nice things for others. In 2022, Francis also did something very important when he dedicated Russia and Ukraine to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. This was done at a time when the world was watching the war in Eastern Europe get worse. In Fatima, Mary asked that Russia be consecrated so that it wouldn't spread its errors around the world. This was seen as a direct answer to that request. Francis's blessing was a deep act that was meant to honor the message of Fatima and call for peace in a world that is on the verge of bigger wars. Even though he was old and had health problems, Pope Francis stayed dedicated to these spiritual efforts until the end. His death in April 2025, just a few days after Easter Sunday, marked the end of a leader with deep ties to the Marian tradition who had worked hard to bring the words of Fatima into modern times. His thoughts on the third secret were also very similar to those of Pope Benedict XV, who had stressed that the visions of Fatima do not show a fixed future, but rather show how capable people are of doing both good and bad things. Benedict famously said that the word of Fatima is meant to bring together good people and inspire spiritual renewal. Francis went even further by saying that each generation has its own problems, wars, and needs to pray and turn away from sin. The third secret talks about the bishop dressed in white going through a city in ruins. This image is even more powerful now, when news stories are full of pictures of destroyed cities, refugee camps, and communities. Even if the vision wasn't connected to a specific pope, its deeper meaning is becoming more clear. It was a warning about the results of people's choices and the need for faith, hope, and kindness that will never go away. When he talked about wars and other conflicts, Francis always brought up the fact that innocent people, especially children and the old, suffer the most. During his time as Pope, his words echoed the cries for repentance that people heard at Fatima, where the angel and Mary begged people to change their ways before it was too late. Francis's focus on social justice, helping the poor, and protecting human rights is similar to Mary's call to compassion and conversion that she gave to the 3 shepherd children in 1917. People who follow the church are still being challenged and inspired by the lessons of Fatima as they get ready for the Jubilee of Marian Spirituality later this year. Following the original figure of Our Lady of Fatima to Rome will be a strong sign of how the past and the present are connected. It will remember Catholics that Mary's call to prayer, penance, and peace is not something that happened in the past, but something that is still very much needed today. Fatima is important to more than just the Catholic Church. The main ideas of Fatima give us hope in a world that is becoming more and more liberal, morally confused, and divided. Their message is that spiritual commitment and moral bravery can lead to change, both in individuals and in groups. They paint a picture of a world where light can win over evil, even though there is pain and unfairness. These values were shown by Francis's leadership, his dedication to dialogue, his unwavering work for peace, and his care for those on the outside, all represent the spirit of Fatima. People all over the world are sad about his death, but his legacy goes on in the many lives he changed and the spiritual movements he started. There is no one event or time that can be used to judge whether the Fatima message has been fulfilled. It is an ongoing process that people and groups live out every day through the choices they make. The dedication of Russia and Ukraine, the spread of the Rosary, and the focus on acts of kindness and justice are all parts of Fatima's effect on the world that are still being played out. The fact that Pope Francis is very devoted to Our Lady of Fatima is a warning that the Virgin Mary is still our spiritual mother. She doesn't leave people. She stays with them, giving them advice, security, and help. It's just as important now as it was in 1917 to call people to prayer, repentance, and change. As we think about what the third secret and the Fatima message as a whole mean, it is important to remember that they are not lessons of hopelessness or defeat. Their main message is one of hope. No matter how bad things look in the world, faith, prayer, and love can make things better and bring peace. Now that Pope Francis has died, it is up to the Church to carry on this lesson into the future. Not only will his successor take over as leader of the Church, but they will also carry on the work of a pope who truly understood the messages and promises of Fatima. Late this year, the original figure of Our Lady of Fatima will be taken to Rome. This will be more than just a symbolic trip. It will be a live proof of how strong faith is and how important Mary's call is still today. It will serve as a reminder to those who believe that the way to peace is still open to those who are willing to listen, pray, and make changes. The message of Fatima, especially the third secret, is not a sure thing. Instead, it is an open invitation to each generation to choose the road of life, love, and grace. That call has been made stronger by Pope Francis's life and death. He left behind a legacy based on the timeless truth that change is always possible with God's help, and hope never dies.